The courtyard of Winterfell breathed with a frosted hush, as though the very stones held the memory of every secret whispered in its long, storied life. Dawn filtered through ragged clouds, glazing the fresh snowfall in pearl and rose. It was the hour when ravens still blinked sleep from black eyes. Yet the gods would already stirred. Bran Stark felt its pulse as if it were his own heartbeat. Slow, ancient, rooted in earth older than names. Hodor stood beside him, enormous, steady, and wondrous as a dawn never dreamed, unbroken. Young Lord Stark sat bundled in furs upon the carved weirwood seat Mira had fashioned for him the previous autumn. He watched Hodor rather than the heart tree, for the miracle was living flesh before him. A man once doomed to a single fractured word, now sorting iron-tipped practice spears into neat rows, humming a song whose melody held neither fear nor madness. The giant knew the tune, though its name escaped Bran. Perhaps an old winter town cradle lullaby Hodor's grandmother had sung by smoky hearthlight. Whatever its origins, the sound wove through the gods' wood like a charm. Every time Hodor's baritone lifted, Bran's direwolf heart eased, as if soothed by a towering brother. The boy's thoughts drifted back, always back, to that night in the cave beneath the world. The cave of green dreams and white walkers, of three-eyed ravens and roots that tasted of blood. Bran had reached too far, touched too deep, and nearly shattered Hodor's mind across centuries. But nearly is not the same as is. Somewhere between scream and storm, between past and now, Bran recoiled from the vision a heartbeat sooner. The door had stayed shut. The dead had clawed fruitlessly at crumbling stone, unable to flood the passage. Summer's howl, Mira's sob, Hodor's roar. None had become elegy. Instead, they had become tomorrow. That tomorrow stretched before them still, uncertain as the shapes swirling in a greenseer's bowl. Yet Hodor's recovery, no, his ascension, was undeniable. Even Maester Wolkan, a thin-lipped skeptic, could not deny the evidence. Hodor learned new words each week, new charges each day. He hauled timbers for the stable repairs, drilled with Arnulf Karstark spearmen, fed ravens, read carved runes by fireside. He slept dream-burdened yet restful, and he woke smiling. Bran knew why. When the boy withdrew from history's wound, he carried Hodor's brokenness out with him, like a shard plucked from a breastplate before rot set in. The cut remained. Hodor still stumbled through nouns and tenses, but the poison was gone. Freed of the time echo that had doomed him, the gentle giant began to bloom. And as he bloomed, Winterfell stirred. The castle stones had heard too many children scream. At last they heard laughter as great as thunder rolling down the King's Road. Afternoons Hodor trained. Ser Roderick Castle might have wept with pride to see the broad-shouldered stablehand mastering the forms Roderick had once taught Bran and Robb on the very same yard. The blunted practice sword was no toy in Hodor's grasp. It became a long-handled cleaver, capable of cleaving shield boards with a single descending arc. The castle folk gathered at parapets to cheer each resounding crack. Even grim Lady Lyanna Mormont, visiting with 10 bearcoat spears, nodded respectfully before turning north again. Yet swordplay alone could never tame what stormed in Hodor's veins. He was more oak than man, his sinew clinging to bone like vines to trunk. The dire advantage of such stature was reach. The dire flaw was speed. To carve agility into that mountain, Ser Brienne, newly returned from the Trident, oath-sore yet undefeated, volunteered to train him. Every third day, as ravens croaked the noon bell, Brienne and Hodor met beyond the broken tower to spar. Bran watched sometimes through the weirwood's red leaves, each session a fable of will. Brienne darted under Hodor's guard, tapping armored fingertips against his ribs, hips, hamstrings. Hodor bellowed, spun, swung, and missed. Over and over he missed, until his roaring grew ragged. His cheeks flushed crimson behind his beard. Finally Brienne ceased, resting Oathkeeper's flat upon her shoulder. "You are no knight yet, Hodor," she told him in that voice forged of kindness and iron. "But you could be the morning in a world that knows only night. Giants shall fear you, aye, but first learn to fear nothing inside yourself. Swords are easy, courage is harder. Hodor blinked, chest heaving. Then he opened his palm and reached for Oathkeeper's blade. Brienne raised one golden brow but let him touch the rippled steel. Hodor traced the Valyrian patterns as if they were runes of fate. When he spoke, the words trembled like a newborn colt. Hodor! Hold! No, Dorf, fight, giants. Tears sprang unbidden to Brienne's eyes. She tapped her gauntlet over his fist and whispered, "Yes, fight giants, and maybe save us all." Far to the north, giants gathered already, though not the free folk companions of Mag the Mighty, but creatures of polished ice and breath like winter's last gasp. Wights of fallen giants lumbered across frozen fields, bound to the Night King's silent will. Ravens saw them and fled south shrieking. Ghost wolves scented them and hid in birch hollows. The living giants who still roamed the Frostfangs wheeled west and south, unwilling to face dead kin reborn in blue flame torment. The news reached Winterfell on a wind so cold it cracked shutter boards. By torchlight, the northern lords argued. Lord Glover insisted they seal every gate and wait behind thick stone. Lady Meage Mormont snarled she would rather die on the field than cower like a sow. Davos Seaworth, gruff, steadfast, counseled caution and time to train fresh levies. Yet time was thinner than a scythe's edge. Bran said little. He felt the dead moving as a fisherman feels undertow tug beneath a calm surface. They came. They always came. But Bran also felt another tide. Hodor's quiet resolve, beating like a great drum. Beneath full moon the boy warged into ravens, flew over Carhold's ruined keeps, and spied the enemy. 3 dead giants, 2 horned, 1 tusked, plodded at the rear of a pale host. Spears of ice jutted from their shoulders. Wolf skulls dangled at cracked bone belts. Bran's heart lurched. Those monsters would reach Winterfell within moons. No wall of men or dwarves or women or children could stall such weight. No gate held fast against a giant's corpse. He cast his vision back to the Godswood, to Hodor sleeping beneath a bearskin. And he knew, storming the East Practice Yard one brittle morn, Bran summoned captains, smiths, tanners, and Hodor himself. "It must be done," he told them in measured voice. "Forged quick, before snows drown the forges. A weapon for Hodor alone." "What sort of weapon?" Lord Glover demanded. "One that hums with fire," Bran said. "One that can crack ice thicker than castle walls." He described it. A great axe, taller than Hodor's own height, double-bladed and quarter-turned like a splitting maul. The haft would be ashwood wrapped in black bear leather. The axe face castle-forged steel inlaid with dragonglass veins. Dragonglass Bran had fetched in dream from beneath fist of the first men. At the apex of each blade they'd rivet shards of obsidian, wicked hooks to catch and rip unnatural sinew. The weapon would weigh as much as 3 shields of hardwood, yet balance cunningly, a star that spun death.
Smith's muteur d'impossible.
But Hodor laid both palms on the anvil as if offering himself to the forge. "Hodor needs," he said, voice low as kettle drums. The smiths bowed and began. While sparks flew, Brienne drilled Hodor without mercy. They practiced footwork amid waist-deep snow. Sidestepping barrels rolled downhill to mimic a charging giant's bulk. Mira Reed, lean and fierce, taught him frog spear stabs, how to slide up under a beast's guard. Theon Greyjoy, wiry, haunted, showed the importance of watching shoulders, not weapons. Hodor absorbed each lesson with a sponge's hunger. Nights he retreated to the Godswood, hacking at straw giants until moonlight kissed the sweat on his brow silver. At last the weapon was ready. They presented it beneath the broken tower as forge smoke drifted in winter spirals. Bran reached from his chair to brush the blade's edge, chill as fresh split ice, sharp as wind over the wall. Hodor lifted it in one hand. The axe seemed born of him, an extension of heartbreak and hope fused to red-running iron. Those who watched Mormont spears, Glover axes, Karstark bows, felt a wordless hush. Some men glimpsed destiny in kings. That dawn they glimpsed it in a stable hand. Snow fell thicker in days that followed, until the skies resembled a cloth of purest milk. Ravens vanished, their ink-flecked silhouettes swallowed by pale gale. Yet Bran's green sight pierced where living eyes failed. The dead host drawing near, a serpent of white coiling toward Winterfell's gate. Bran urged riders south to call Queen Daenerys faster, though he feared her dragons could not span the storm in time. The castle's fate might rest not on fire from above, but on a single unbroken door that once might have been. On the eve before battle, Bran requested Hodor's company in the Godswood. The heart tree wept frozen tears. Bran said, "Do you know why you lived?" Hodor crouched, massive knees creaking. He tilted his head, puzzled. "You lived because your future matters," Bran continued. "You are not only to slay giants of ice, Hodor. You are to teach us what one heart can carry." Hodor's brow furrowed, yet his eyes shone with a child's gentle certainty. "Hold no door," he murmured. "Hold hope." Bran laughed, the sound fragile and wondrous in cold air. He reached, and Hodor's vast hand enveloped his small, scarred fingers. Together they listened to the wind sigh through branches that had witnessed first men kneel and undulls burn and dragons shriek skyward. And they waited. The battle began at the ragged cusp of dawn. No horns sounded, for horn blasts are for living armies. The dead require none. They swept forth with silent hunger, snow hissing beneath their feet. Whites clambered up Winterfell's furrows like a tide of chalk-white crabs. At their back lumbered the 3 giant corpses, towers of muscle turned marble by death's chill. Archers loosed flint, iron, leather-fletched shafts. Some shafts found sockets in white skulls, others shattered on frozen cartilage. Fire arrows flashed, but winter gusts snuffed them mid-flight. The dead persisted, unfeeling. Hodor stood upon Winterfell's bridge, axe balanced across shoulders. Behind him Brienne commanded a shield wall of Mormont women and Glover men. To either side, Karstark pikemen bristled. Bran watched through ravens swirling above, his mind nested in wings. When the first giant's white reached the gate, its roar shook banners loose from poles. It swung a tree trunk club, pulverizing the parapet. Men shrieked, stones crumbled. Then Hodor stepped forward. "Giants!" he bellowed. Clear, resounding, more word than he'd once spoken in moons. The white turned incandescent blue eyes upon him. They clashed. Hodor ducked the club by a whisper, snow exploding in his wake. His axe spun in a silver arc, kissing the white's thigh. Dragonglass veins flashed black as midnight. The blade bit deep, shearing petrified flesh that smoked where it opened. The giant reeled, yet did not fall. Dead sinews do not feel pain. They endure. It raised its foot to stomp, but Hodor pivoted, sliding under its shadow. He drove his axe upward, hooking one obsidian barb atop the creature's kneecap. With a guttural roar, Hodor wrenched. The knee shattered like a frozen apple beneath a smith's hammer. The giant toppled sideways. Hodor leaped clear as the corpse crashed, shaking Winterfell's walls. Before the white could lurch up, he reversed his grip and cleaved downward into its neck.
Draag een glas met spijn.
A crackling hiss burst, blue flames winked out, and the corpse went still. A roar rose from the living lines, fierce and joyous. Brienne shouted for advance. Theon's archers rained arrows at the flanking whites. Yet 2 giant corpses remained, and they plowed toward Hodor on opposite fronts. The second giant swung a stone wagon axle like a flail. Hodor parried with his axe haft, bones screaming. He staggered but held. The flail's momentum jerked wide, shattering masonry. Hodor jammed his shoulder beneath the giant's chin, drove upward, and with the hooked blade ripped out a slab of rotted jaw. The white gurgled, soundless terror, and dropped its weapon. Hodor capitalized, kicking the creature's ankle aside as Brienne's shield wall surged to hack its legs. Together they hamstrung it until Brienne herself leapt, Oathkeeper ablaze with dragonfire oil, plunging through the white's eye, collapsed, burning. The third giant bore down as the second died, frost breath coiling like vipers. This one carried no weapon, its fists were graven spires. It swatted Karstark pikes like reeds, crushing men in a single sweep. Bran felt despair ripple through the defenders. He screamed through the ravens, "Hodor!" Behind you! Hodor spun too late. The giant's fist struck him square in the chest, throwing him across the courtyard like a child's doll. He landed against the well with a sickening crunch. Blood bloomed scarlet upon snow. The watchers gasped as he struggled, coughing, ribs surely broken. The giant advanced to finish. Brienne sprinted, but walls of lesser whites blocked her path. Arrows thudded uselessly in the creature's hide. Bran's raven flew low, swirling around Hodor's head. The boy poured every shred of green sight he owned into his friend vision of Heathfire's songs, Bran's laughter, old promises. Hodor's eyes opened. They were wet with pain yet bright with purpose. Slowly, impossibly, he stood. Blood dripped from his lips. He hefted the axe one-handed now, for his left arm hung useless. But one good arm sufficed. The giant lunged. Hodor sidestepped. An echo of Brienne's relentless drills and slashed. The blade parted the wight's wrist, severing hand from arm. Momentum carried the corpse headlong. It stumbled on ruined claw, knees buckling. Hodor raised the axe overhead and swung with the weight of every door he had never held, every word he had never spoken, every life he now meant to save. The blade sank into the giant's spine at the base of the skull. Dragonglass sizzled. Frost smoke burst. The towering corpse convulsed once, then sagged to its knees, head drooping like a felled pine. Dead again forever. Silence claimed Winterfell for a single heartbeat. Then a roar like avalanche thundered from the walls. Even the heart tree seemed to thrum approval. Hodor swayed, breath ragged, and lowered his axe. Across the field, the Night King watched with eyes that glowed indifferent sapphire. He raised an arm as if to summon spectral hail. Yet a distant roar split sky and cloud, dragonfire. Shadows screamed overhead, Queen Daenerys plunging through blizzard on Drogon's obsidian wings, regal and Viserion flanking. Fire bloomed in ribbons of gold, melting the storm. The tide turned, but Bran knew before any other. The true victory had begun not with dragons or kings, but with a gentle giant who chose to live. When dusk settled upon scarlet snow, Hodor lay in the great hall swathed in bandages smelling of pine pitch and cloves. Maester Wolkan pronounced his ribs cracked, shoulder dislocated, blood lost, yet heart sound, spirit unbroken. Bran sat bedside, small hand resting upon Hodor's monstrous paw. Outside, bards already composed verses of the giant slayer. Hodor of Winterfell, highest of Hearth Knights, who felled the undead titans when hope seemed lost. Children scampered through corridors brandishing wooden axes, shouting Hodor as rally cry. Stalwart men, gray of beard and scar of eye, clasped strangers in arms and wept. Bran asked softly, "How do you feel?" Hodor's lips twitched a sheepish grin. "Big hurt," he murmured, then, after a breath, added, "Big happy." Bran smiled through tears. "You saved us, Hodor." The giant's eyelids drooped, yet his voice found one last thread of strength. "Save Dor," he whispered. "Save all." He slept then, and his dreams were not Bran's to see, but the boy felt them brush his own mind. Dreams where Hodor stood among blackened giants, axe held aloft, while children played beneath Winterfell's blooming heart tree. Dreams where no door needed holding because none were closed to light. The war was far from won. Night's darkness yet roamed. Cersei's schemes yet festered. But songs took root in memory. Songs of a stable hand who rose from broken mind to hero's crown. In years hence, when snows melted and Kingsroad rang with merchant wheels again, minstrels would tell travelers of Hodrick the Tall, Lord Protector of the northern Weirwoods, sworn giant slayer and gentle shield of all weak things. And somewhere beyond the sound of lutes, a boy with hair like dark rivers would laugh, knowing that fate, for once, had been kinder than prophecy. Yet this tale has many doors yet to open, and some may hold darker winds still. For though a giant has fallen, winter's night is long, and the fire of hope must be stoked anew. The embers in Winterfell's hearths glowed like the last sparks of a dying star, yet everywhere the castle flickered with newborn purpose. Dawn had followed dusk through a night thick with victory songs and the copper tang of blood being scrubbed from stone. And now the gray light of morning seeped over ramparts plastered in half-melted snow. Pipers with cracked lips still tried their skirling tunes. Children whose throats were raw from cheering found quieter ways to mimic Hodor's triumph. Wooden axes made from broom handles rose and fell in pantomime of giant-slaying strokes. But inside the great hall the mood remained hushed, almost reverential, as if even the hearth did not dare blaze too loudly lest it disturb the protector who slumbered beneath layers of wolf pelt and gauze. Hodor dreamed. In his dream he was neither stable boy nor hero, but a sapling that felt the seasons pass through its bark. Each ring deepened with swelling joy or shrinking grief. Rings no one else could see, though their echoes shaped the man Bran Stark now trusted with Winterfell's very future. In sleep he heard voices that were at once thunder and lullaby. The voice of Olden telling him stories beneath amber lantern light, Bran whispering about flight and fate while snow rattled the shutters, Mira laughing when frog spears punched clean through pond ice. And deeper still, around the roots of his mind, lingered that single fractured command he had once been: hold the door. But the words had changed. What had been an edict of doom became invitation. Hold hope, hold hearth, hold the north. They circled him like ravens in sunrise, black shapes limned gold. Maester Wolkin's creak of shoes across flagstones nudged those visions aside. The maester parted furs to check the giant's bandages, then nodded in satisfaction at how pink muscle now sealed the axe-cleft skin of Hodor's shoulder. Heels like a draft horse, Wolkin muttered. 7 be good. The lad might be on his feet by moon's turn. He drew the pelts snug again, stirred broth across the hall's coals, and drifted off to consult parchment scribbles of salves. When Bran rolled quietly to Hodor's cot, sunlight through the open shutters etched red leaves from the god's wood across Bran's cheeks. The boy hesitated before speaking aloud, as if afraid to wake either patient or dream. But he needed the comfort even unconscious Hodor provided. A mountain that moved for him alone. Queen Daenerys leaves by midday, Bran said softly, words meant mostly for himself. She flies to group at Moat Cailin and sweep the King's Road with Dragonfire in case the Night King pushes south toward the Twins. Jon rides with her host. They're counting the hours until more of the dead join the field. Hodor snored in reply, low, rumbling, but Bran fancied it a promise of sorts. So the boy gave the big hand a grateful squeeze and wheeled away. Jon Snow stood in the courtyard beneath snow-clotted banners, fastening the dire wolf clasps on his cloak. Ghost hovered nearby, tail swishing fine powder into tiny eddies. Daenerys spoke with Ser Jorah by the stables, while Rhaegal's green wings folded and unfolded behind her like restless thoughts. Jon caught Bran's approach and bent to eye level. "You should be proud, little brother," Jon said, glancing toward the great hall door. "Hodor saved us all." Bran's gaze fixed beyond the walls, pupils whitening a moment, Warg's sight lingering on unseen horizons. "It was not my brother," he answered at length. "It was Hodor's own heart." The grief of the north tempered into steel. Then his eyes cleared, and Bran looked almost shy. "But yes, I am proud." They spoke of the coming march, Jon's need to persuade the Manderleys and the Umbers still living to fortify the causeway roads with stakes of dragonglass. Bran listened, chewing lightly on the inside of his cheek, his mind half in ravens already skimming those same roads. "You won't have long," he warned. "The Night King drifts east to the Dreadfort, drawing strength from each ruined village. His next giants may not be corpses. They might be living ones bent to his will, confused, poisoned by blue flame." Jon's jaw tightened. "Living giants? You've seen it. In shadows, yes. Not truth yet, but the seed of truth." Bran blinked, and storm frost glittered in his lashes. "If it bears fruit, no dragonglass blade short of Hodor's new axe will matter. We will need hearts as large as his." Jon placed a gloved hand on Bran's shoulder. "Then we'll give the realm reason to believe in hearts. Keep him safe." Bran nodded. "And you, tell the queen her dragons are half the battle. The other half is those willing to kneel beside Hodor, not behind him." Snowflakes drifted between them, silent farewells. Soon hooves clattered on courtyard stones, dragons trumpeted, and the wind swallowed Winterfell's stillness. Bran watched until the host curled beyond the ridge, then turned inward to the longer war. One fought inside memories and broken promises. 3 days crawled like frost across glass. Hodor woke each morning earlier, swung cobbled weights with his one unbroken arm, and insisted on limping to the practice yard. Brienne protested, but his persistence battered her defenses. She relented by midday and set a course of footwork so slow and deliberate even a maester with gout could follow. Yet under that pace pulsed fresh purpose. She made him step and plant precisely as though ice giants were looming again, refusing his natural brute lunge for a dance of inches and angles. "Your enemy learns," she cautioned, dark hair stray against cheekbones flushed by cold. "The next giant might duck, might parry, might even be your friend enslaved. Every stroke must account for sorrow." Hodor listened, chest still bound in linen. Snowflakes settled on his beard, and he smiled, small, self-mocking, but real. "Sor row," he echoed. "Learn slow, fight true." That afternoon Bran guided his chair to the Godswood edge, summer padding ahead. The dire wolf sniffed Hodor's bandages before settling watchful near the heart tree. Bran felt the resonance of living weirwood root hum through his wheels and spine. Through that hum he glimpsed far rooms of memory where time grew pliant. He risked a short plunge, eyes rolling white. He saw last hearth of House Umber, the once grand hall now gutted, rafters blue with hoarfrost. He saw a scattered handful of survivors, girls too young for spear and boys too old for lullaby, cowering behind meager barricades. And outside the walls, two shapes strode across swirling powder, taller than any giant he'd yet seen, but not ice. Flesh, bone, hide, horns still warm. Living giants. Their eyes, though, glimmered unnatural azure. Bran felt their confusion like thunderclouds just before lightning. They knew themselves bound, but not why. Against them marched white walkers on stallions wrought of rime, herding the enslaved colossi with spears tipped in frozen fire. Bran jerked back, breath ragged. Snow in the Godswood felt warmer than that vision. "Hodor," he whispered. "The giants come walking." The stable hand paused mid-step. He understood more than his vocabulary allowed. Bran saw it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his uninjured hand flexed on the axe haft. Hodor had nightmares of chains, too. Bran's voice carried to Brienne. She approached, studying Bran's pallor. "Tell me," she demanded. Bran complied in spare detail. Brienne's blue eyes hardened. "Then we ride. A small party. Fast, quiet. Pull the children from last hearth before those giants breach their gates." "No time," Bran argued. "Snow closes roads. Ravens cannot outrace that host. We make a road." Brienne turned to Hodor. "Will you fight again so soon?" Hodor rotated his wounded shoulder. They'd said it only yesterday. A grunt of pain escaped, but he nodded. "Save Cheel Dren," he said. "Fight sad giants." Mira Reed, carving arrow shafts nearby, rose. "The neck breeds swamp runners swift as any road horse," she said. "I can track through blizzard. Let me lead you to last hearth." The knot of volunteers swelled. Theon Greyjoy wishing to repay life debts still unpaid. Lady Alice Karstark refusing to abandon kin, though most Karstarks had fallen. Tormund Giantsbane, who arrived that midnight with 40 free folk archers, banging loudly at the gates because he smelled the stink of dead giant on the wind and couldn't resist. Tormund's laughter rattled hall rafters when he beheld Hodor. "Aye, big man, you cut down ice brutes like saplings, or so these Northmen sing. Let's see if you can keep pace with a proper Giantsbane." "Not race," Hodor responded, to Tormund's delight. "Save." Davos Seaworth protested the party's size, fearing Winterfell's defenses might thin, but Bran insisted each name mattered. Symbolism carried weight greater than numbers. "If we rescue those children, survivors across the Winterlands will flock to Winterfell's banners," he explained. "They will believe there is more than dread waiting in darkness." Davos finally relented, muttering about fools with lion hearts. He supplied sleds of soaked dragonglass spears, torches doused in wildfire oil, and a map noting secret bog roads once used by Karstark poachers. Then he clasped Hodor's wrist. "Bring them back," he whispered. "The realm is counting breath by breath." Hodor squeezed gently, an answer and a pledge. They departed beneath a moon sharp as a flint chip. Snow hissed under hooves, sled runners, and the padded steps of direwolf and hounds. Brienne wore mail blackened to dull glow. Theon favored boiled leather, easier for stealth. Mira carried her frog spears across her back in an X, and Tormund's axe swung from a loop of reindeer hide. Hodor hefted his double-bladed great axe over one shoulder, the weapon swaddled in sailcloth to keep wind from shrieking across its teeth. The first night on the King's Road, white haze swallowed the world. Swirls of diamond dust danced in torchlight, devouring all distance so thoroughly they feared stepping off the earth's edge. Yet Mira's reed-born instincts guided them by scent of pine pitch or angle of wind across cheek. Bran rode small in a wicker basket strapped to Summer's flank. His eyes often rolled white, scouting far ahead through crows. In those mind flights he sensed pulses of sorrow radiating from the enslaved giants. 2 sorrow beats, irregular but mighty. They trudged closer with each passing watch. Bran measured his party's progress by the slowness of those beats. If the cadence quickened, they were losing ground. Midway to Last Hearth, the wind died. The silence felt heavier than any gale, and with it came a new scent, carrion beneath fresh frost. Bran withdrew into his own eyes just as Summer's hackles bristled. Tormund gave a soft whistle. Figures loomed between gnarled birch trunks. Wolves, a dozen at least, fur caked in ice crystals. Their eyes mirrored the unnatural blue. Whites, but not the stumbling, half-rotted things they'd seen before. These moved with a predator's grace still echoing life. They had been direwolves once, or near dire, offspring of ancient packs dwindling south of the wall. Summer snarled, deep and mournful. Bran felt the grief pierce even through the warg link. Cousins returned as nightmares. Brienne whispered, "Dragonglass arrowheads. Loose when I call." The archers knocked. The wind refused to breathe. Then a long howl split the stillness. Neither living nor fully dead. The pack surged. Arrows whistled. The first wave fell, shafts black with glass protruding from skulls. But others leapt over the bodies. Summer met the lead white midair, fangs like white scythes. They rolled. Snow burst. Mira jammed a spear through ribs of another. The corpse scrabbled, blue eyes dimming. Theon slipped twin daggers into jaws snapping for Tormund's thigh. One kiss of dragonglass turned the wolf limp. Brienne parried a lunging wight with her shield edge, but its momentum flung her backwards. She hit a pine trunk, denting bark. Hodor stepped between her and the pack, axe unwrapped. He swung once, an arc wide as moonrise, and 3 wolves lost heads in a spray of frost. He pivoted, planted a boot on one chest, ripped the blade free, and used the haft to shove another wight toward Tormund's waiting axe. The free folk cheered Hodor like a war horn. Moments later nothing moved save drifting flakes, and Summer's soft whine beside still forms that had once been kin. Bran dismounted the basket, half crawling to bury his face in Summer's fur. He whispered apologies neither wolf nor boy fully understood. Hodor rested a hand on the direwolf, voice gentle. "Sad, stop," he murmured, offering what solace he could. Tormund wiped gore from his beard. "If the dead can twist beasts so swift, they'll twist living giants honest." His eyes glinted with something near fear, though the wildling would call it caution. "We reach Last Hearth by dawn, or we body burn along the way." Dawn's blue-white smolder had scarcely kindled when they sighted the Umber stronghold. Towers no higher than Winterfell's walls but broad-shouldered and squat, built to endure gales funneling off the shivering sea. Smoke curled from gaps between shutter boards, too little for a hearth fire, Bran thought. Likely last barrels of pitch being prepared for defense. Brienne signaled halt behind a crest of snow-drowned boulders. Through the spyglass Davos had given them she counted perhaps 20 living defenders atop the battlements, torches clutched like talismans. Beyond the moat the land sloped gently north into white blur, empty for now, but wind carried distant groans that might be marching giant or ice cracking in the deep. No trumpet of challenge greeted them when Mira waved a reed-carved banner. The Umbers were perhaps too wary of illusions. Brienne decided on direct approach. She, Mira, and Hodor advanced with empty hands raised, leaving Tormund and the rest crouched ready with bows should archers loose. "Who goes?" bellowed a hoarse voice. "Brienne of Tarth, sworn to Lady Sansa Stark," she answered. "We bring aid." The gate remained barred. Another voice, younger, tinged with dryness like old parchment. "No aid to give here. Zombies and giants both want through these gates. We'll keep to ourselves." Hodor stepped forward before Brienne could speak again. Axe still slung across back but posture broad and unyielding. He cupped hands around mouth. "Save children," he called, each syllable a stone dropping into still pond water. There was a stirring atop the parapet. A girl with freckled cheeks peered over. "You're the giant killer," she whispered, though wind carried it clear. "They told songs at Winterfell already." Hodor nodded once. A closer murmur, then timbers groaned. The gate cracked open just enough for a figure to slip through. A boy of perhaps 14, wearing an umber-stamped gorget too large for his bony shoulders. He eyed the strangers, especially Brienne's bright armor and Hodor's towering height, then gestured them inside. Within, the courtyard was wreckage. Burned white parts lay heaped in corners, half covered in snow. Barricades made from wagon wheels and overturned ale casks lined every door. The boy introduced himself as Harrion Umber, cousin to the late Smalljohn. "We sent all who could ride south weeks ago," he explained, voice taut. "The ones left are too young, too old, or too stubborn to quit their hearth even for the end of the world. Or too brave," Brienne corrected softly. Tormund's band fanned into the yard, distributing food and fire pots. Bran, carried on a litter by Summer and Greyjoy, convened with the castle's maester, an aged woman named Maester WLL. They assessed survivors, 12 children under 10, another 8 aged 10 to 12, a score of elders. Enough to fill 2 sled wagons if crowded. But sound to the north broke planning. A long, mournful horn. Not dead horns, brand new. Dead carried nothing living. This horn was real, ancient, rag-wrapped perhaps in memory of free folk hunts, and its note trembled with sorrow. Onto the ridge shambled the enslaved giants. Their hides were thick with frost, but steam coiled from mouths. They wore no iron chains. Bonds were unseen yet absolute. At their flanks rode 5 white walkers, pale armor spiked like hoar crystal. One gestured with an ice spear. The giants halted. Bran felt the pressure of their minds. Confused storms, grief hammered into obedience. He saw through their eyes the walls of Last Hearth as obstacles, not heritage. He glimpsed fleeting images of calves running across blooming tundra, memories forced beneath new commands of ice. He recoiled, gasping. Hodor unslung his weapon, though his injured shoulder protested. His face set like winter stone. Brienne placed herself at his side, Oathkeeper in hand, and studied approaches. Mira whispered, "The giants may not know they fight for death. If we kill them, we bury hope of alliance with any of their kin still free." Bran bit his lip until copper bloomed. "Then we break the walker's control," he said. "Free the minds within before sword meets throat." "How?" Theon asked, eyeing the undead horseback shapes. "I can try to reach them through the weir," Bran answered. "But I must be close enough to ride their thoughts." Tormund barked a laugh. "Boys going to warg a couple of tuskheads while we hold back crystal demons. Best get our boots muddy." Brienne formed ranks. Tormund's archers on loft of gatehouse, Theon's daggers with Mira's spears at the breach, Hodor at the inner yard ready to charge the moment Bran signaled. She stood sentinel before Bran's warg chair, shield raised. "Do it," she told him. Bran closed eyes. Wind rushed inward, smelling of pine rot and old grief. He flew. He saw the world from 40 feet above ground, each footstep vibrating through bone like temple bells. The giant whose sight he captured called himself Gromger once, child of the Skyridge clan. Memories poured like spilled mead. Snow hunts, leather thongs braided with mammoth hair, laughter rumbling across thaw valleys. Then, the blue blaze, the walker's arrival. A spear of cold thrust against chest, not to kill but to brand mind. Commands hammered, walk south. Fight living. Tier walls for the Night King. Bran shouted inside that skull. You are chained. Fight chains. Deep within the giant's heart, some smolder glowed. But orders of ice were iron. They scraped. He listened for the second giant, Brella, a matriarch whose tusks bore carved runes telling the births of 7 calves. Bran pushed thought tendrils to her too, coaxing memory with images. Those calves playing in summer grass, the hiss of mammoth milk poured into birch bowls. Songs sung in Ulu tongue about nightsky lights. Something cracked. Outside, Brienne's shield rang as a White Walker's spear glanced. The creatures advanced wary. They feared dragonglass arrowheads hissing overhead, but their eyes fixed on Bran as if sensing the warg link. One lifted hand. Frost mist gathered swirling between knuckles, forming a slender dart of jagged rime. Hodor moved. He should not have been capable of sprinting. Pain still gripped ribs. Yet adrenaline eclipses pain. His feet thundered across yard. His axe found full circle. The ice dart launched at Bran but shattered midair under shockwave of Hodor's swing. Shard sparkling. The walker recoiled, and archers seized moment. 3 arrows pierced its breastplate. The creature screeched, body cracking like pond surface in sudden thaw, and collapsed into shards. Momentum broke. The other walkers retreated 2 paces, regrouping. Hodor planted himself as Bran's living bulwark. Inside giant minds, Bran urged, break free. The iron cannot hold memory, not truly. Gromger balked, ice commands gripping like nets. Brella remembered a lullaby carved into her tusks. She hummed it. The hum was a mountain trembling. Chains splintered. Her eyes bled blue to white to brown. She turned head slowly, confusion raging. The walkers sensed shift. One barked in high, frozen tongue, brandishing spear. In yard below, Hodor saw Brella's eyes flicker. He bellowed, free! The word boomed across ramparts. Tormund echoed it in old tongue, chanting, free! Free! Archers ceased firing at the giants, aiming instead for walkers. Brella roared, sound of glaciers calving. She swung to face her captors. The spearbearer jabbed, but she caught shaft in one hand, twisting. Ice weapon splintered. Brella's other hand clenched Walker's torso. She crushed until armor snapped like eggshell. Blue fire hissed out, and Walker was no more than snow. The remaining walkers fled toward tree line. Gromger's chains loosened. Bran felt his anguish. He had trampled free folk villages while enslaved, killed halfkin. But in that remorse spark came defiance. He knelt, huge palm flattening snow in peace gesture to last hearth battlements. Tormund hooped, sliding down ladder to yard. Knew the big folk still had blood stead of frost. He pounded fist to chest, then greeted Gromger in broken giant speech, naming himself father of bears and lover of all good mead. Gromger blinked uncertain but rumbled a reply. Brella surveyed carnage, dead walker shards glittering like spilled jewels. She turned to Hodor. They regarded each other, 2 towers made of muscle and story. Brella bowed head slightly, tusks scraping snow. Hodor mimicked, using axe as crutch. Bran withdrew from mines, exhaustion heavy as lead. Snow tasted on his tongue though he sat within walls. Warg residue. Brienne steadied his shoulders. You saved them, she whispered. No, Bran replied, voice thin. Memory saved them. I was only the door this time. He risked a smile, though tears blurred his vision. And Hodor held it open. Word spread on raven wings faster than any storm. Wintertown lit torches in celebration. Horns blared from Deepwood Motte to the rills, where fisherfolk banged ladles on iron pots. Giants of flesh now march with men, walkers slain by axe forged of starstone, the Night King losing more than he gains. At Winterfell, Davos read incoming raven scrolls and allowed himself a rare grin. Hells, he muttered. The songs may outlive us all. Inside the great hall, Maester Wolken had prepared a dais for new guests. When Brella and Gromger at last reached Winterfell's gate, having walked 2 days beside Bran's returning party, they knelt outside, refusing entry lest their height crack lintels. Bran ordered stones removed so arch could widen. Stonemasons scurried in wonder. Meanwhile, children rolled huge snowballs to gift the giants. Brella accepted with puzzled delight, letting toddlers scrawl charcoal runes on her tusks. Hodor returned to the infirmary only after ensuring every Umber child ate porridge. He eased ribs onto straw mattress. Bran visited again, dusk painting stripes across vaulted ceiling. "You spoke," Bran said, recalling that single thunderous free. "A new word." Hodor glanced down, sheepish. "Word free," he confirmed, enunciating carefully. "Words will keep coming." Bran brushed his knuckles over Hodor's wrist. "We have giants who need stories retold in their tongue. Perhaps you will teach them ours. Perhaps they will teach you more." Hodor's eyes warmed. "Talk." "Soon," he promised. Bran reclined in his chair, listening to hearth crack. Snow battered shutters, but inside, breath of lives mingled with wood smoke. He wondered what 5 hours would feel like to a listener of this story centuries hence. Would they note the moment where a boy in a crippled body and a man once broken found themselves twin pillars holding memory alive? Would they guess the war still far from done? Or that the worst grief yet waited south where kings and queens plotted thrones even while ice marched? He decided such questions belonged to morrows. Tonight belonged to healing, to songs quietly plucked on Theon's newly traded lute, to Mira carving small frog spears for Umber tots who clamored for souvenirs. Bran tilted head, closed eyes. He dreamt not of war but of doors flung wide, archways carved in living weirwood through which passed children laughing, wolves loping, giants humming old lullabies. On the far side of each threshold blazed hearthlight, and beyond hearths, fields of green unmarred by ice. The doors stood not to keep terror out, but to let newfound family in. And at the heart of it all, Hodor leaned against his axe, watching, guarding, but never holding closed. The fire guttered low while constellations wheeled unseen beyond winter clouds. Yet Winterfell hummed with life, heartbeats layered like drumskins, dreams spilling into corridors and frost-rimmed courtyards. Somewhere in surrounding wilds, White Walkers regrouped, forging colder nightmares. They would come again. When they did, a gentle giant who once could say only one word would be ready, with more words than most men's courage, and an axe that hummed with every memory he chose to guard. 5 hours was but the first breath of his legend. The North at last had time and hope enough to listen the whole night through. Snow whispered over Winterfell's battlements in fine, drifting threads, thinner than candle smoke, yet every sentinel felt its hush like a prayer. The reunited giants Brella and Gromger had taken up silent vigil on the outer courtyard. Vast shadows slumped against walls too small to frame them, eyes half-lidded while dusk bled into nightfall. Their presence alone stole fear from the air. Children who once shrieked at thunder now toddled wide-eyed past feet the size of ox carts, certain those titans would not let darkness breach the gates again. Inside the great hall, Hodor stood beside the hearth, shoulders still laced in linen but posture straight as a pike. Sparks floated upward to lost rafters, and in that glow the stable hand looked every inch the fabled champion tavern songs were already gilding. Beard ash-white with frost, eyes warm hazel, axe haft leaned lightly against one hip. He was telling a story in his halting, growing tongue. How summer once chased a full-grown elk clear to the edges of the wolfswood, while a circle of umber and stark children gasped at every pause, hanging on each careful consonant as if it were treasure. Bran listened from his wicker chair nearby, pride welling with each new syllable. Every time Hodor conquered a word, it felt as though the wall itself cracked for the better. Across the hall Davos spoke in low tones with Brienne and Theon over a map weighted by flagons of watered ale. Ravens put the Night King 3 days east of the Dreadfort, the Onion Knight murmured. If he veers south he flanks Moat Cailin. If he angles west he slams Maidenpool and rides the King's Road straight to us. Either way, we're the Anvil. Brienne tapped a gauntlet finger on Winterfell's ring wall schematic. We are the hammer, sire. We shape the blow or it shapes us. Her gaze flicked to Hodor, then back to Davos. Give me 200 spears, 20 archers with dragonglass heads, and Hodor with the giants. I'll turn their vanguard before it ever reaches the moat. Theon frowned. Archers we can spare, spears perhaps, but run the sums. Every night we lose 8 and 10 to frostbite or white ambushes along our leakwork palisade. Fewer lads stand each dawn. We will find more, Brienne answered, or make do, and in her eyes burned a certainty that unsettled Davos. It was the same light Ser Barristan once carried before the trident, the resolve of one already willing to die, so long as her charge lived. Tormund burst through the side door at that moment, pelts clotted with snow, cheeks ruddy as fresh spilled wine. "Ha!" he boomed, slapping frost from his sleeves. "Hodor, big lad, come taste the mead the Mormont girl broached, puts hair even on a giant's tongue." He waved a skin of amber liquor so pungent even dour Glover men sniffed the air. Hodor chuckled, shaking his head. "Later, maybe." "Later," Tormund guffawed. "Snow's fallen now, boy. Later might be never." Yet he did not press, seeing the children ringed patiently around Hodor like sparrows at dawn. Bran signaled summer with a soft whistle, and the direwolf padded forward, huge shoulders brushing kneeling giants' ankles as he crossed. When summer lay by Hodor's feet, the story resumed, this time describing how Summer and Shaggy Dog once wrestled beside a half-frozen stream until they burst through the ice and came up roaring like wet bears. The children clapped chubby hands. Umber Harrion's little sister laughed so hard tears glazed her lashes. But not all hearts in Winterfell were so light. Outside, beyond torchlit windows, the wind carried the faintest tremor, an inhuman whistle, as though the cold itself were singing through marrow. Bran felt it first, pain like splinters across his temples. He closed his eyes, reached for the raven roost, and spilled his mind outward. He flew above drifts glazed opal by moonlight, past the ridge where free folk bowmen concealed themselves among black pines, to a hollow washed in starlit stillness. There he found the source, a line of figures carved from night and rime, white walkers tall and thin as nooses, spears crystal sharp. Behind them came shambling corpses in chainmail crusted with rime, and far behind lumbered shapes even Bran's borrowed eyes balked to study. Beasts fused of bone and winter magic, not giants but something older, mammoth skeletons reknit with ice, antlers of stag skulls grafted into shoulders. Eldritch chimeras. The walkers were experimenting, forging nightmares from the carcasses of every northern legend. Bran's heart hammered. The distance between Host and Winterfell measured maybe 40 miles, 2 days' march if snow stayed calm, 1 if wind hardened drifts to flat crystal. He snapped back to the hall with a gasp. The children started. Hodor steadied Bran's chair. "Cold?" Bran croaked, colder than before. "They're shaping new horrors. We meet them too soon." Brienne strode over, face unreadable. Davos followed, muttering, "The Queen's dragons are still gathering strength at Moat Cailin. She cannot fly until storms ease." Bran shook his head. "Storm builds worse tomorrow. We ride tonight, strike at their forges, sever their new beasts before they stand ready." Davos scrubbed his beard. "You talk of a raid, lad. A strike force that slips behind the walkers, yes? We'd need stealth no white can smell." "Stealth?" Bran repeated, eyes sliding to Hodor and then to Brella and Gromger visible through the archway. "And distraction." Moon dipped low when the raiding party assembled beneath the gatehouse. Brienne wore mail wrapped in white wool to dullen its gleam. Mira donned gray leathers mud-streaked. Theon cloaked himself in pitch-black olive shade. Davos, ever the practical sailor, carried rope coils and grapnels. Tormund shouldered a quiver of dragonglass javelins stronger than any bowstring's bite. And Hodor, bandages freshly changed, buckled a half-cuirass hammered hours earlier by Mikken's apprentices from boiled leather faced in iron studs. His axe blade now bore runes inked by Maester Wolkin from Valyrian glyphs, words meaning fire, memory, release. They glowed faint crimson against steel. Bran would not ride with them. His place lay in the weir, but he rolled to the courtyard to speak last to Hodor. Snow swirled through torchlight, settling white on Bran's hair. "Their forge glows blue," he said quietly. "You'll see it behind a line of dead pines. Strike the 10 who sing around the fires, White Walkers focused on shaping bone. Without them, the army's new beasts crumble." Hodor nodded once. His speech was almost fluent now, though he still trimmed unnecessary frills. "We strike hard," he said. "Then we run fast. Then you run home," Bran agreed. "I'll guide you through ravens, but if I falter, follow summer. He knows the scent of my dread." Hodor bent, touched forehead gently to Bran's. Neither spoke again, words felt too brittle. Giants opened the gate by hand, hinges screaming. Brella and Gromger knelt so the raiders could climb onto their shoulders. Tormund on Brella's right, Brienne astride Gromger's vast collarbone, Theon gripping a tufted hide strap behind. Mira rode skis fashioned from curved ash planks. She would ghost ahead as scout. Hodor walked at Gromger's heel, long strides near effortless across drift. They moved into the dark. From the ramparts, Sansa watched them vanish, arms wrapped in a wool mantle twice her width. She turned to Bran. "You were certain," she said.
"No," Bran answered.
"But certainty is a luxury we buried with our dead. Now we spend courage instead." Sansa exhaled, breath curling. "Then pray courage yields change." The night's first hours held gentle storms, hardly more than wind whisper and snow's feathery hiss. Mira skimmed slopes as though born for this cold, scouting ridgelines where white sentries perched like scarecrows. She signaled with owl hoots, two short for clear path, one long for threat, the calls floating back to Brienne and Tormund, who relayed to Hodor. When white patrols came near, Gromger lay his giant shape flat in hollows, cloak of shadow over smaller companions. Once a walker mounted on skeletal elk trotted so close its breath frosted Brienne's helm. She felt the chill across eyelids where only slits of flesh remained exposed. Yet the elk rider passed, uninterested, perhaps lulled by the stillness of a giant they believed enslaved. Soon the sky ahead bruised cobalt with flicker of uncanny fire. Bran's raven perched on a dead birch, sending impressions. Heatless heat, scent of charred marrow, ring of antler hammered to bone. The forge. Mira slid back into view, breath steady. "3 watchers," she rasped. "Whites only, no walkers. They poke skulls on halberds, perhaps quarter-mile out. Past them is clearing where blue flames leap." Brienne considered. "Clear watchers quietly. Hodor, you and I move on foot around Gromger. Brella circles north to draw gaze once forge erupts. Theon, you slip between fires, find the singer's weapons and toss them in the blue blaze. Tormund, dragonglass javelins for any walker that shows." Tormund flashed a grin. "Aye, my lady tall." They split. Mira crept low, spear tip poised. She dispatched first watcher with gentle thrust under chin where skull met collarbone. Second watcher's jaw cracked in silent scream, arrow through eye from Theon's recurve. Third fell to Davos's belt knife, surprising even the Onion Knight that his hands could still kill quiet. Then they saw it. A rough pit lined with bones hammered into racks, where a score of small pale figures knelt singing in a language older than men. Blue fires licked marrow, shaping it into lattice while ghostly hands twisted sinew ropes. At the pit's center lay half-formed beasts, torsos of aurochs fused to talon legs of ice eagles, horns of goat curling from sockets empty of eyes. The song held the magic. The hands followed like puppets to those notes. Brienne signaled, and Hodor moved. He stalked larger than any man but smaller than a giant's memory, cloak blending near invisible until he leapt down a scree of shale. One singer looked up, barely a child's height though ancient as winter, and opened a mouth of frost-rimmed fangs. Hodor's axe took the head. Fire hissed at the spray. The chant broke a chord. Brienne smashed 2 more with Oathkeeper, blade blazing wildfire oil along groove. Ice forms stuttered mid-splice, then cracked. Theon scrambled to a pile of crystal spears, kicked them into the pit. They melted like sugar on a forge. But walkers emerged from Treeline, 6 in quick succession. Tormund hurled first javelin. direct through a walker's narrow chest. Creature burst to powder. Second javelin missed, glancing off a shield of spiked air. The walker advanced. Brienne interposed, but even Brienne could not match the unnatural speed. She caught spear shaft against shield, but frost leached through wood, numbing arm to elbow. Hodor roared. He barreled into walker flank, shoulder check that sent things skidding across bone shards. Before it regained footing, Hodor's axe cleaved from clavicle to hip. Blue flared, gone. Yet more poured from dark. Brella's distraction came too late. They glimpsed her silhouette cresting ridge, bellowing in giant tongue, but walkers ignored, scenting nearer threat. One thrust spearhead toward Theon. Davos yanked him aside, taking the half-square in ribs. He cried out, fell. Mira launched Frog's spear. Walker shattered but spilled a scream that tingled nails of every mortal present. Hodor spun, saw Davos pinned under ice spear where cloth already frosted. Something inside Hodor snapped. Memory of gentle Maester's hands resetting his shoulder, of small thanks whispered. He charged, axe windmilling. Two walkers turned to face him. He swung with fury born of entire childhood's silence. First walker lost legs. Second's weapon blocked the blade, but edge scraped down spear and into chest. Both died, but last walker, taller than the rest, armor spined like icicles, stood over forge pit, raising arms. Bran felt it even before his raven shrieked. This one conjured runes of winter deep, not just singing but commanding. The half-made chimera thrashed suddenly, limbs knitting complete, eyes igniting sapphire. It surged upright, a fusion of bear torso and elk antlers, claws of ice hooking each paw. Hodor stumbled back from its roar. Brienne shouted for retreat. Theon dragged Davos free. Tormund readied last javelin, but Beast moved with terrifying quickness, swiping giant claws that smashed stone shards into dust. Brienne Dove rolled, but antlers gouged helm and she tumbled stunned. Hodor planted feet. The beast advanced, each step sending tremors, measured by walkers' gestures. Hodor glanced at axe. Runes smoldered but blade heavy from prior kills. Instead, he dropped it. He reached to the ground, found Davos's rope coil half buried. He looped quick slip knot as Bran had once taught for sled lashings. Beast lunged. Hodor flung rope, snaring and antler tine. He wrenched with all monstrous strength, pivoting hips as Brienne had coached. The beast's head jerked sideways. Momentum toppled it partly over the pit's lip. Blue flames licked its underside. Hodor lunged, grabbing antler base two-handed, ignoring ice shards that sliced his palms. He heaved. The beast plunged into forge fires. Blue conflagration exploded upward, engulfing Walker. Ice armor spiderwebbed, then the Walker screamed. A brittle chime. Flames inverted into implosion, sucking light inward. A vacuum thudded, then hush. When snow settled, pit was black, fires out, beast half molten to slag. Only odor of scorched bone remained. Brienne crawled to knees, helm dented. She stared at Hodor, rope burnt ashes in his bleeding hands. "You fought without weapon," she whispered. Hodor exhaled steam, chest heaving. "Used what had," he said simply. They gathered shattered weapons, hauled Davos onto a litter of canvas. Brella and Gromger rejoined, alarm warring with relief at smell of gone magic. They began long retreat, leaving Forge a cemetery of broken myth. Snow thickened to curtain by midnight. Wounded Onion Knight shivered but cracked jokes about southern summers to keep eyelids open. Mira scouted rear. Tormund marched center, singing body ballad none understood. Yet dread stalked edges. They all felt emptiness left by extinguished Forge calling to Night King like lost limbs itch. Bran's ravens followed overhead, offering waypoints. He saw walkers swirling distant. Confusion turned fury. They gathered but did not pursue. Perhaps they waited for orders or felt still sense of disarray. Either way, reprieve. As dawn pinked, Winterfell's towers loomed, giants lumbering slower with fatigue.
Gate Gors cried greetings.
The party crossed threshold to cheering roar. Stable hands rushed with blankets, maesters with heated wine. Inside, Davos received warm poultices. Brienne's helm pried off, revealing bruise but no break. Mira rinsed her spear in barrel of vinegar, motions calm though hands shook. Hodor collapsed by hearth, shoulders slumping. Children returned, whispering wide-eyed. They had been woken by horns heralding heroes' return. One boy reached out, touching dried blood on Hodor's glove. "Did it hurt?" he asked. Hodor smiled wearily. "Yes," he answered. "But hurt ends. Hope stays." He closed eyes. Sleep dragged him down before he could say more. Sansa met Bran near Dais, reading report of casualties. 8 lost along West Palisade, but gain overshadowing grief. She touched paper. They destroyed the Bone Forge. The Raven from Moat Cailin claims the Night King halted march for a full turning of glass, as if rethinking war's shape. Bran allowed himself small nod. Hodor changed the story again. Sansa gazed at giants slumped near fire, now gently snoring. "Will there ever be songs grand enough?" she whispered. "Songs rarely carry truth whole," Bran replied. "But memory might." His eyes clouded. "I see roots now branching, some timelines where we fail, some where we stand. Each shift flows from acts of living courage, not prophecy. We keep choosing doorways. Hodor keeps freeing them." 2 nights later, Jon Snow returned with Daenerys ahead of ragged host. Dragons shrieking across dawn, warmth like summer thunder rolling through snowfields. They landed beyond the God's Wood, scales steaming. Jon dismounted regal and ran to Bran, who sat waiting outside Heart Tree. "You dared the forge without us," Jon accused, half grin, half dread. Bran shrugged. Time demanded action. He gestured toward courtyard where Hodor sparred gently with Brella. Giant teaching giant subtle turns of wrist to parry with tree trunk club. "We gained allies." Daenerys approached, eyes alight. "We heard ballads at every village," she said. "A stable hand who tore monsters from the Night King's very kiln, and freed giant kin." Bran nodded. "He repairs what I once broke." She studied Bran. "You guide many pie, AJ's three-eyed raven. But bricks on boards are nothing without hearts beating inside them." Bran smiled thinly. "True, and hearts beat because stories give them reason to." Nearby, Harion Umber's sister perched on a hay bale, etching crude antlers into wood scrap while Hodor corrected shape with patient hand. Each time she carved wrong, he gently guided finger, saying, "Slow true." The courtyard thrummed with new language, giant words mixing with child laughter. Tormund's free folk dialect, Northern Brogue, a cacophony forging something braver than tongues. Daenerys exhaled, white plume vanishing. "Then we give them a final story," she said. "One where winter falls but spring rises." Jon clasped her gloved fingers. "We march to intercept the Night King east of Widow's Watch. Dragons in sky, giants on ground, Stark and Targaryen banners side by side. We must draw him before he regains forging grounds." Bran saw flicker of ways. Fields of shattered ice, dragons shrieking amid storm, Hodor's silhouette against pale sunrise swinging axe of fire with runes, Brella and Gromger flanking him. He also saw other paths, dragons dying, walls burning, Bran lying in roots while endless cold devoured lungs. All roads held pain. One held dawn. "Go," he said. "I will watch through ravens and hold his mind as long as I can." He frowned. "But if I fail, Hodor stands last bulwark. He cannot falter." Jon looked skepticism. One man, giant still, cannot face the Night King alone. Bran's voice softened. "He is not alone. He carries every door we opened instead of closed. When chains drop, we all step through." Jon accepted. Preparation's word. Smiths hammered new arrowheads. Cooks brewed broth thick as mortar. Tailors stitched banners with twin sigils. A dire wolf howling with inflaming dragon wings. Children practiced spear thrusts with broom handles. Brella taught them ancient giant greeting. Palm to heart, fist to sky. That evening, Bran rolled to Hodor's bedside. The giant sat cross-legged on straw mattress repairing axe leather with bone needle. He looked up. "March soon." "Soon," Bran said. I may not stand with you in flesh, but I will ride wings above. Do you fear? Hodor paused, considering. Fear, losing friends, he admitted, speech smoother each day. But fear keeps me careful. Bran reached, grasped wrist. Remember first door you held, he whispered. Not the cave door, but the one you opened when you spoke your own name beyond brokenness. Hold that memory. It shields you. Hodor nodded. You freed me first, Bran. Bran winced. I almost doomed you. Almost, Hodor agreed, then smiled. But almost is not is. They sat in quiet. Departure morning glimmered like steel. Columns formed. Gloverfoot flanked by Karstark pikes. Mormont she-bears mounted shaggy garrons. Wildlings under Tormund wore mixture of rusted chain and snow wolf pelts. At front walked two giants, Brella bearing tree trunk lance and Gromger hefting wagon wheel as shield. Between them paced Hodor, axe across back. His cuirass now painted with twin sigils, wolf and dragon. Brush strokes crude but fervent. Brienne rode at column's head beside Jon, Oathkeeper bright. Davos, arms still bound, nonetheless insisted on saddle. Theon kept bow across knees. Mira slinked along vanguard as scout. Daenerys soared overhead, Drogon a black star eclipsing sunrise. Rhaegal followed Jon's earlier injuries healed. Viserion glided lean, scales glinting jade. Their roars reverberated across frozen barrows. Sansa, Arya, and Bran watched from battlements. Arya's sword needle hung at her hip. She whispered something only husk of wind caught. Perhaps a prayer to old gods or to no god at all. Sansa pressed gloved fists to lips. Bran's ravens took flight as horns sounded. Gates yawned. Army marched southeast toward Widow's Watch, boots crunching rhythm like war drums. Hodor glanced back once and raised fist. Childish gesture turned heroic. Children on walls thrust toy axes skyward, echoing. Travel was hard. Ice stormed midday, chilling chainmail to skin. Yet morale held. The giants forged paths, stomping drifts flat. Hodor and Tormund felled trees for makeshift sleds when wagons bogged. Evenings, soldiers gathered round giant-built bonfires while Mira sang neck ballads and free folk played bone flutes. Brienne drilled pikemen by torch until muscles trembled. She let none forget discipline. On fourth night, they camped below half-collapsed tower crowned in crow nests. Bran's ravens circled overhead, warning of movement. Night King less than 30 miles, host swelled anew. Jon convened council inside ruined tower's base. Map stones clattered. They would lure Night King onto frozen inlet where dragons could flank overhead while Brella and Gromger anchored front. Hodor's squad would slip around, severing white reinforcements at narrow isthmus cut by tide. Brienne objected, Hodor still healing. But Hodor insisted, voice sure, giants trust me. I fight with them. Plan set, they slept in snatches. Before dawn Bran reached through ravens and felt cold edges of Night King's will. Sharper since forge destroyed, like predator starved. Bran risked deeper look and nearly drowned. Swirling cosmos of death, he recoiled bleeding nose. He sensed the king preparing something desperate. At sunrise scouts reported unnatural stillness. Whites arrayed down valley, waiting, but center line parted as if anticipating champion. Jon tightened cloak. He means to come himself, he said. Daenerys accepted with grim nod. Then end it. They marched, banners whipping. 3 hours and valley opened to inlet iced glass smooth. Whites formed semicircle along ridge. Behind them, white walkers lined like statues. And there, in center on skeletal horse, sat Night King, crown of frost horns radiating. Dragons screeched overhead. Whites hissed, but did not advance. Night King raised single hand. Crack. Ice beneath inlet fissured. Spiderweb lines. Jon cursed. He wants to sink us. Daenerys signaled Drogon. They spat flame at ice, but heat struck like hammer on bell, fracturing sheet faster. Giants roared, retreating to firmer snow. Infantry staggered back. Night King advanced alone, crossing fissures untouched. Then Hodor moved. He dashed across cracking surface, small ripples tracing his weight, but his stride even. Brella and Gromger began to follow, ice sagging under them, but Hodor shouted in giant tongue, "Stay!" Surprised, they halted. Hodor faced Night King alone. Jon yelled protest. Bran screamed through ravens, but Hodor raised axe. Night King tilted head curious. He stepped forward, spear forming from thin air. He thrust, Hodor parried, sparks of frost versus obsidian rune. Ice beneath them shattered more, but they danced between gaps like dueling shadows. Each block of frozen water floated separate. Hodor leapt from tile to tile, momentum he learned from Brienne. Spear sang, sliced linen on his arm. Axe glinted, carving notch in frost armor. Overhead dragons prepared second assault, but Bran sensed Night King's trap. He readied hail of spears aimed at Drogon. Bran shouted through ravens, "Not yet!" Daenerys pulled back. Hodor pressed attack, using rope loops to snare spear haft as once he had antlers. He yanked. Night King released, conjured shard of ice dagger, lunged. Hodor caught wrist. For heartbeat they locked, strength against chill magic. Frost crept across Hodor's bracer, turning leather to stone, inching toward flesh. "Hodor!" Bran cried from miles away. Memory flooded giant. Old Nan's hearth, Bran's laughter, children's awe, Brella's bowed head, the door he never held because life beckoned. He roared, breath hot enough to steam. His free hand drove obsidian axe point between Night King's breastplates. Blue light erupted. Cracks raced across King's body. I shrieked. Night King stared, more surprised than pained. Then fissures reached crown, and he burst into tempest of snow, shards scattering like dying stars. Silence. Whites on ridge convulsed, limbs jittering. One by one they stilled, collapsing boneless. White walkers screamed. Their links severed. Some fled, others shattered as dragons wheeled down and fire scoured them. Ice sheet beneath Hodor groaned, parted. He sank waist-deep before Brella bounded onto inlet, grabbing his arm. She hauled him onto firmer block. Jon and Brienne sprinted out, ropes ready, but giants had him safe. Across valley soldiers gaped as whites lay inert. Then cheer thundered, echo 100-fold. Winterfell's bells rang 4 nights later. Long bronze tolls heard leagues away. Armies returned bearing no prisoner of death. Only smoke of pyres trailing upward like ribbons of dusk. Hodor rode at front upon a sled throne pulled by Brella. Children ran ahead scattering pine needles. Bran waited by gate. When Hodor stepped down, Bran saw frostburn raw along his forearms, but smile in eyes. Bran reached. Hodor knelt, huge but gentle. "Door held," he murmured. "But open, always open." Bran's vision blurred. Yes, and winter's door closed behind him. Jon proclaimed feast. Daenerys lit hearth with dragon flame that roared golden. Songs soared, tales of Stablehand who slew the Night King, of giants bowed to mortal courage, of dragons dancing with wolves. Scribes etched runes on weirwood bark to remember. Later, after banners lowered and revel ended, Hodor stood alone in Godswood. Snow fell soft, no longer wrathful. He touched heart tree trunk, whispering thanks in speech still broken but earnest. Brella watched, humming lullaby of giants. Bran rolled near. "World will ask what name to carve in stone," he said. Hodor turned, brow creasing. "Name same. Hodor." Bran chuckled. "Perhaps, but they'll add titles. Door opener, giant friend, night bane." Hodor shrugged massive shoulders. "Just Hodor." He laid hand on Bran's small cap of hair. "And friend." Bran looked at red leaves drifting like slow embers. "And friend," he echoed. They stayed until moon-crowned sky, sharing silence where words were once impossible. And in that hush the future breathed brisk, bright, boundless. Beyond any door, beyond any wall, in every heart still brave enough to open. The snow kept falling, but it tasted less of sorrow and more of promise.